The massive council chamber floated in deep space, a structure built by civilizations millions of years old. Inside, representatives from 47 alien species gathered around a circular platform that glowed with soft blue light. The air processors humbled quietly, adjusting the atmosphere for beings who breathed different gases and lived at different temperatures. Ambassador Claire Morrison stood alone in the center of the platform. She was a woman in her mid-40s, with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. Her simple blue uniform looked plain compared to the elaborate shells, crystals, and organic armor worn by the aliens surrounding her. She kept her hands clasped behind her back and her expression neutral. Above her, Kiex loomed on his elevated seat. The reptilian creature stood nearly 10 feet tall when he rose to his full height. His scales gleamed like polished bronze under the chamber lights. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device that made it sound cold and mechanical. "Human Ambassador Morrison," Kex began. "You have been summoned to receive an official decree from the Galaxy Council. You will listen and you will comply." She simply waited. Quex continued, gesturing with one clawed hand. "For 10 of your Earth years, humanity has been expanding into neutral space zones. You have built colonies on 17 worlds. You have established mining operations on 43 asteroids and moons. You have sent survey ships into sectors that have remained untouched for millennia." Around the chamber, other council members shifted in their seats. A being made entirely of floating crystals chimed softly, which the translators interpreted as agreement. A creature that looked like a mass of silver tentacles rippled with what might have been approval. "This expansion must stop," Kex declared. "The Council has discussed your species at length. We have concluded that humanity poses a potential threat to the established order of this galaxy. You grow too quickly. You claim resources too freely. You do not ask permission from those who have maintained peace in this region for millions of years." Claire's expression didn't change. She'd been a diplomat for 20 years, and she'd learned that showing emotion was often a mistake. So she stood still and kept listening. Kex pulled up a holographic display that showed human territory. The small cluster of colonies looked tiny compared to the vast empires controlled by council species. Some of those empires stretched across hundreds of star systems. "The Galaxy Council hereby orders humanity to cease all expansion immediately," Kex announced. "Furthermore, you will withdraw from all colonies established outside your original solar system. You will return to Earth, Mars, and your inner worlds. You have one standard cycle to comply. That is approximately 2 of your years." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species voiced approval. Others remained silent. "If humanity fails to comply," Kex continued, "the Council will be forced to take corrective measures. We have maintained order in this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. We will not allow a young civilization to disrupt that order." She looked up at Kex, then around at the assembled council members. Dozens of alien faces, some barely recognizable as faces at all, stared back at her. "May I speak?" she asked quietly. Klex made a gesture that seemed like permission. "I need to bring this message to Earth's colonial authority," Claire said. "I need to deliver your ultimatum to my government. Give me 48 hours to travel home and return with humanity's official response." Several council members made sounds of surprise. They'd expected arguments, protests, or immediate surrender. Instead, this human simply wanted time to deliver a message. "You understand the seriousness of this decree?" "I understand perfectly," Claire replied. "And you understand that the Council's decision is final?" "There will be no negotiation, no compromise. You will comply or face consequences." "I understand," Claire said again. Her voice remained steady. Kex seemed satisfied. "Very well. You have 48 hours. Return here with your government's acceptance of our terms. The Council will be waiting." Claire nodded once, turned, and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed softly in the vast chamber. The aliens watched her leave, confident in their power and certain of humanity's eventual submission. When the door sealed behind her, Claire allowed herself a small breath. She walked through the neutral station that housed the council chamber, past other diplomatic quarters where various species conducted their business. Her transport ship waited in the docking bay, a small vessel designed for speed rather than comfort. Her co-pilot, a young man named Danny Foster, looked up when she entered. "How'd it go?" "About as expected," Claire said, settling into her seat. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed," Danny asked as he began the launch sequence. "They want us to abandon every colony outside the solar system," Claire explained. "They're giving us 2 years to retreat back to Earth, or they'll force us," Danny's hands froze over the controls. They're serious? Completely serious, Claire confirmed. They think we're just another young species that will bow down when they raise their voice. Are we? Danny asked quietly. Claire looked out the viewport as their ship pulled away from the station. In the distance, she could see some of the Council's massive warships floating in formation. Each vessel was larger than any city on Earth. Each represented a civilization with technology and experience humanity couldn't match. I guess we'll find out, she said softly. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the Council station behind. As they raced toward Earth, Claire composed her report. She chose her words carefully, describing everything Kex had said and the cold certainty in his voice. Meanwhile, on human colonies across space, ordinary life continued. On Mars Colony, families tended their greenhouse gardens. On Titan Base, engineers worked on new fusion reactor designs. On Europa Station, scientists studied the strange microbes living beneath the ice. None of them knew yet that powerful aliens had just demanded they abandon their homes. Exactly 48 hours later, Claire Morrison returned to the Galaxy Council chamber. She walked through the same doors, across the same platform, to stand in the same spot where she'd received the ultimatum. The council members had gathered again, filling their seats around the circular room. Kex looked down at her from his elevated position. Ambassador Morrison, you return on time. Does your government accept the council's terms? Claire reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small data chip. It was a simple device, no larger than her thumbnail. She held it up so everyone could see it. This contains humanity's official response, she said calmly. She placed the chip on the central platform. A beam of light scanned it, then projected the data into the air above her head. The holographic display showed a simple video recording. A man appeared in the projection. He sat at a plain desk in what looked like an office on Earth. He wore a gray suit and looked to be in his 60s, with silver hair and tired eyes. His name appeared below the image. Director Kevin Harper, Earth Colonial Authority. Greetings to the Galaxy Council, the recording began. Kevin's voice was calm and measured. I am Kevin Harper. I speak on behalf of humanity's elected government and our colonial authority. Ambassador Morrison has delivered your ultimatum. We have reviewed your demands carefully. The council members leaned forward slightly. This was the moment they expected to hear submission, perhaps with some pleading for reduced terms. Our answer is no, Kevin said simply. The chamber went completely silent. Kevin continued as if he'd just declined an invitation to dinner rather than defied the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Humanity will not abandon our colonies. We will not withdraw to our solar system. We will continue our peaceful expansion into unclaimed space, as is our right as a spacefaring civilization. QX's scales shifted color slightly, sign of agitation. Other council members began making sounds of disbelief. The recording went on. Let me be clear about humanity's position. I would be so happy. We have never attacked another species. We have never invaded inhabited worlds. We have never stolen resources that belong to others. Every colony we've established has been in neutral space on worlds that were empty and unclaimed. We have broken no laws because we do not recognize the Council's authority to create such laws. Kevin paused, looking directly into the camera. The Galaxy Council is not a government. It's a club. A group of old empires that decided they should control who gets to live where in the galaxy. You maintained your order through intimidation, not justice. That stops now, at least where humanity is concerned. Around the chamber, the alien representatives erupted in angry sounds. Crystals chimed with fury. Tentacles thrashed. The insectoid Zakran hive mind buzzed so loudly the translators struggled to interpret it. Kevin's recorded voice rose slightly to be heard over the chaos. You asked us to comply or face corrective measures. I want you to understand something about humans. We're a stubborn species. We've spent our entire history being told what we cannot do, what we cannot achieve, where we cannot go. Every time, we've proven those limits wrong. He stood up from his desk, placing both hands on its surface. You have bigger ships. You have older technology. You have millions of years of history. We understand that. But we also understand that backing down now means backing down forever. It means teaching our children that might makes right, that bullies win if they're strong enough. Kevin's expression hardened. So here is humanity's counter message. No, we will not comply. We will defend our right to exist among the stars. If you choose to enforce your ultimatum with violence, we will meet that violence with everything we have. We don't want war, but we're prepared for it. The recording showed Kevin sitting back down. His voice returned to its earlier calm tone. The choice is yours, Galaxy Council. Leave us alone to live our lives peacefully, or start a war with a species that has nothing left to lose. We'll be waiting for your decision. The image faded. The chamber fell silent again. QX stared at the empty space where the recording had been. This is your government's official response? This defiance? Yes. Those are our terms. Terms? A Valorian representative's crystalline voice rang out. You offer us terms? You, a species barely a century in space, dare to make demands of us? We're simply stating our position. You can accept it or not. That's your choice. The Zacharan hive mind spoke, its collective voice creating an eerie harmony. You cannot possibly believe you can resist the combined might of 47 civilizations. Claire looked up at the massive insectoid form. We don't have to win. We just have to make the cost too high to be worth it. How many of your ships are you willing to lose? How many of your people are you willing to sacrifice to force us back into our solar system? Every young species that has defied the Council has regretted it. Maybe, Claire agreed, or maybe every other young species was smart enough to back down before things got serious. Either way, humanity's decision is made. You have our answer. She turned to leave, but KX's voice stopped her. Ambassador Morrison? Do you truly understand what you're condemning your people to? Claire turned back. For the first time, her calm expression cracked slightly, showing something harder underneath. Do you understand what you're condemning yours to? You're used to younger species being afraid of you. Humanity spent thousands of years being afraid of each other. We learned to fight wars that destroyed entire continents. We built weapons that could end all life on our planet. Then we learned to control that violence, to direct it, to use it only when absolutely necessary. She paused at the doorway. You think you're dealing with frightened children. You're not. You're dealing with a species that knows exactly what war costs and chose this path anyway. Think carefully about your next move. The council chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Kex spoke to the assembly. Prepare the fleet. 3 weeks after humanity's refusal, the Galaxy Council's combined fleet gathered in the Valorian home system. Thousands of warships assembled in formation, representing the military might of dozens of ancient civilizations. Each vessel gleamed with energy shields and weapons that had kept peace through intimidation for millennia. Admiral Zenth stood on the bridge of his flagship, a crystalline vessel the size of a small moon. The Valorian commander had lived for over 3,000 years and had never seen combat. He didn't need to. The mere sight of the Council fleet had always been enough to make rebellious species surrender. How many ships do we have? Zenth asked his tactical officer. 4,762 warships, Admiral, the officer replied, his crystalline form shimmering with pride. The largest fleet assembled in 12,000 years. Zenth nodded with satisfaction. And how many ships do the humans have? Intelligence estimates fewer than 200 combat-capable vessels, Admiral. Most are converted civilian transports with basic weapons. Their largest warship is 1/10 the size of our smallest destroyer. Then this will be over quickly, Zenth concluded. Set course for human space. We'll begin with their outermost colonies. Once they see what we're capable of, they'll beg to surrender. The massive fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving streaks of light across the darkness of space. Across the galaxy, other species watched through long-range sensors and communication networks. Most assumed this would be a brief demonstration of power. A few older civilizations, ones that remembered the galaxy before the Council's dominance, watched with more interest and said nothing. The Council's propaganda broadcasts went out to every settled world. The message was simple. Humanity had violated galactic order and would now face correction. The broadcast showed the mighty fleet and contrasted it with images of small human colonies. The narrative was clear. Foolish children would now learn their place. But as the fleet approached the outer edge of human territory, Admiral Zenth began noticing things that didn't match his expectations. Admiral, we're detecting unusual activity on long-range sensors, his tactical officer reported. The human colonies aren't evacuating. Zenth studied the holographic displays. The officer was right.
Mining stations continued operating.
Transport ships moved on regular schedules. There was no panic, no desperate flight toward Earth. Perhaps they don't understand what's coming, Zenth suggested. Or perhaps they do, another officer said quietly. The fleet entered human space near a small mining colony on an asteroid designated HR 447. The colony had maybe 5,000 humans living and working there. A handful of defense satellites orbited the asteroid, outdated models that wouldn't last 10 seconds against Council weapons. Zenth opened a communication channel. Human colony HR 447, this is Admiral Zent of the Galaxy Council Fleet. You are ordered to evacuate immediately. You have 6 hours to board transport ships and depart. After that time, we will destroy all structures and reclaim this territory. The response came from a woman with a calm voice. This is Colony Director Helen Price. We're not evacuating. This is our home. Defending it, Zenth replied. The Council has shown more mercy than you deserve. Don't waste it. Mercy? Helen's voice carried a hint of dark humor. You threaten to destroy our homes and call it mercy? No thank you, Admiral. If you want this asteroid, you'll have to take it. Zenth stared at the display in disbelief. 6 hours passed. The humans didn't leave. As promised, Zenth ordered the attack. What happened next shocked every observer. The defense satellites didn't just fire simple projectiles. They launched coordinated strikes that exploited gaps in the Council ships' formations. When Council vessels moved to destroy them, the satellites revealed secondary systems, automated drones that had been hidden in the asteroid's craters. The humans lost the battle, but they made the Council pay for every meter of space. 3 Council ships were destroyed. 7 more took significant damage. The small human colony inflicted casualties that Zenth's forces hadn't experienced in living memory. How is this possible? Zenth demanded. They should have been helpless. His tactical officer studied the battle data with growing concern. Admiral, the humans didn't fight like a desperate colony. They fought with military precision. Every move was calculated. They turned their entire mining operation into a weapon. The fleet moved on to the next target, a research station near a gas giant. Again, the humans refused to evacuate. Again, they fought with cold efficiency. The Council won, but the cost kept rising. On Mars Colony, Peter Grant stood in his apartment watching the news broadcasts from the outer colonies. He was a former soldier, 40 years old, with scars from Earth's last major conflict 2 decades ago. He'd retired to Mars to live a quiet life with his wife and daughter. His neighbor, an engineer named Carlos Webb, knocked on the door. Peter, have you seen the community message board? They're asking for volunteers to help reinforce the emergency shelters. Peter nodded. I saw it. I'm heading down there in an hour. You really think they'll come here? Carlos asked. To Mars? If they're serious about pushing us back to Earth, yeah, they'll come here eventually, Peter replied. He looked at a photo on his wall showing him in military uniform. Much younger, much less tired. The question is whether they're willing to pay what it'll cost. She was developing new fusion reactor designs, work that had nothing to do with the war. Her assistant, a young man named Greg Palmer, kept glancing at the news feeds with worry. Dr. Chen, shouldn't we be evacuating? Greg asked.
Linda didn't look up from her calculations.
Evacuate to where? Earth? If the Council wins out here, they'll come for Earth too. Better to keep working and trust that our military knows what they're doing. But the fleet heading our way is massive, Greg protested. Yes, Linda agreed calmly. And they've never fought anyone who fought back before. That's a disadvantage they don't realize they have. Back in space, Admiral Zent's fleet continued its advance. They destroyed 5 human outposts now, but the victories felt hollow. His forces had lost 43 ships. Hundreds of crew members had died. The humans were supposed to be helpless, but they fought like every battle mattered more than survival itself. Zenth received another ultimatum from the Council, this one directed at a human agricultural colony on a moon called New Iowa. The response was the same as always, polite refusal. Send the message again, Zenth ordered. Make them understand. His communication officer hesitated. Admiral, permission to speak freely? Granted. I don't think they misunderstand. I think they simply don't care what we threaten them with. Center said nothing. Deep down, he was beginning to suspect his officer was right. The battle for the outer colonies continued for 3 more weeks. Admiral Zent's fleet pushed deeper into human territory, winning every engagement but losing ships with every victory. The casualty reports piled up on his desk, numbers that shouldn't have existed in what was supposed to be a simple enforcement action. In the command center of Earth Defense Ship Vigilant, Captain Nicole Davis studied the tactical display with cold concentration. Her ship held position near Mars, part of a defensive line protecting humanity's inner colonies. She was 38 years old, a career military officer who'd spent 15 years preparing for a war she'd hoped would never come. Captain and Council fleet detected at the edge of sensor range, her tactical officer reported. Estimated strength 600 vessels. Time until they reach our position? 4 hours at current speed. Good. That gives us time. All stations begin final preparations. Communications send the coordination signal to the other defensive ships. Weapons. I want firing solutions ready for the moment they enter our range. There were no dramatic speeches or emotional moments. Everyone knew their job. Everyone had trained for this. The Earth Defense Force had only 42 ships in this sector. They faced 600. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Lieutenant Paul Sherman, Nicole's second-in-command, approached her chair. "Captain, the Council is broadcasting another surrender demand." "I ignore it," Nicole said without looking away from her display. "We've heard it all before." Paul hesitated. "Ma'am, with respect, those numbers—" "I can count, Lieutenant," Nicole interrupted gently. 600 against 42. They have better shields, better weapons, more experience. I know all of that. "Then why are we staying?" Paul asked quietly. Nicole finally looked at him. "Because every hour we hold this line is another hour for Earth to prepare. Because retreating now means they push us all the way back home without resistance. Because someone has to show them that humanity doesn't break easily." She paused. "And because those are our orders." The Council fleet approached. Admiral Zenth stood on his bridge, studying the human defensive positions. His tactical analysis showed the humans were badly outnumbered. This should be the easiest battle yet. "All ships advance in standard formation," Zenth ordered. "Target their flagships first. Once their command structure falls, the rest will scatter." But as the Council fleet moved forward, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't hold their positions in a static defensive line. Instead, they began moving in coordinated patterns, weaving between asteroids and using Mars's gravity well to their advantage. "They're not fighting like defenders," Zenth's tactical officer observed. "They're fighting like hunters." The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness. Council ships unleashed devastating energy weapons. Several human vessels exploded immediately, torn apart by firepower they couldn't hope to match. But the remaining human ships didn't retreat. Instead, they used the debris from their destroyed comrades as cover, firing precisely targeted shots at vulnerable points in the Council ships' formations. Nicole watched 3 of her fellow captains die in the first minute of combat. She felt the loss like a physical weight, but she couldn't afford to stop and mourn. Target the lead cruiser, exploit the gap in their left flank formation. Fire. The Vigilance weapons struck true. The Council cruiser's shields flickered, and human ships from 2 other positions immediately focused fire on that same spot. The cruiser's shields collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. Admiral Zenth watched his lead cruiser break apart with growing disbelief. "How did they know where to target?" "They've been studying us, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. "They know our standard formations, our tactical doctrine, our weaknesses. They've turned their technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage." The battle continued for 6 brutal hours. The human ships used every trick they'd developed, every tactic they'd practiced, every piece of knowledge they'd gathered about Council warfare. They didn't win through superior firepower. They won through superior preparation and the willingness to sacrifice anything necessary. When a human ship was crippled beyond repair, its captain would deliberately crash it into Council vessels, using their own destruction as a weapon. When ammunition ran low, human ships used debris as projectiles, turning wreckage into improvised missiles. Nicole's ship took heavy damage in the 4th hour. Half her crew was dead or injured, life support was failing in 3 sections. Her weapons were down to 30% capacity. "Captain, we should withdraw," Paul urged, his voice tight with pain from a head wound. "We've done everything we can." Nicole looked at the tactical display. 31 of the original 42 human ships were gone. The Council fleet had lost 90 to 7 vessels, but they still had overwhelming numbers. "Send a message to all remaining ships," Nicole ordered. "All back to secondary positions. Controlled retreat. Maintain firing solutions as we move." The human ships began withdrawing, but not in panic. They moved methodically, covering each other, making the Council pay for every kilometer they advanced. Admiral Zenth should have felt victorious. He'd broken through the human defensive line. The path to Mars lay open. But as he looked at his casualty reports, victory felt like defeat. "Admiral, we've lost nearly 100 ships," his tactical officer reported. "Thousands of crew members are dead. Our remaining vessels have taken significant damage." "But we won," Zenth said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Did we?" the officer asked quietly. "We're supposed to be teaching them a lesson. But what lesson are we learning?" Zenth had no answer. On Earth, Director Kevin Harper received the battle reports. He sat in his office, reading the names of the captains and crews who died defending Mars. Each name represented someone who'd chosen to stand and fight rather than surrender. His assistant, a young woman named Amy Cooper, entered quietly. "Sir, the Council's broadcasting their victory across the galaxy. They're claiming humanity is nearly defeated. Kevin looked up with tired eyes. Let them claim what they want. The truth is in the numbers. We hurt them badly out there. We proved that fighting us cost more than they expected. Is it enough? Amy asked. I don't know, Kevin admitted, but it's all we have. Courage, preparation, and the willingness to pay the price for our freedom. On the Vigilant, Nicole sat in her damaged command chair listening to her surviving crew work to keep the ship functioning. They'd retreated to the secondary defensive line, ready to fight again when the Council advanced. She was exhausted, wounded, and grieving for the people she'd lost. But she wasn't defeated. None of them were. Admiral Zent's fleet stopped advancing. For the first time since the campaign began, the massive armada held position instead of pushing forward. The cost of breaking through humanity's outer defenses had been calculated and recalculated. The numbers told an uncomfortable truth. On his flagship, Zent stood before the Council's high command through a holographic communication link. The faces of various alien leaders stared at him, waiting for an explanation. Admiral, why have you halted the advance? Kex demanded. You have superior numbers. You have Mars within reach. Finish this. Commander QX, we have lost 143 warships. Over 15,000 crew members are dead. Our remaining vessels are damaged and our supply lines are stretched thin. But you're winning, the Zakran hive mind buzzed. The humans are retreating. They're not retreating in panic, Zenth corrected. They're conducting strategic withdrawals. Every meter we advance costs us ships and lives. At this rate, by the time we reach Earth, we'll have lost half our fleet. The council chamber fell silent. These were civilizations that hadn't faced real losses in thousands of years. The idea of sacrificing half their military strength to punish one young species seemed suddenly absurd. A quiet voice spoke from the back of the council chamber. It belonged to an ancient being called a Witness, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach. Reconsider? Quex hissed. We issued an ultimatum. If we back down now, every young species will think they can defy us. And if we continue, the Witness replied calmly, every young species will see that defying us is possible if they're willing to pay the price. The humans have already proven that. The argument continued for hours. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species watched with growing interest. The propaganda broadcast that once showed council dominance now showed burning ships and casualty lists. The narrative was shifting. 3 days after the fleet stopped advancing, Claire Morrison received a message. The council wanted to talk. Not to deliver another ultimatum, but to negotiate. She arrived at the neutral station with Danny Foster. They walked into a smaller meeting room, not the Grand Council chamber. Klex waited there with only a few other representatives. The reptilian diplomat looked different now. Less arrogant, more weary. Ambassador Morrison, Quex began, the council wishes to discuss terms. I'm listening. We propose a compromise. Humanity may retain most of your current colonies. In exchange, you will accept certain restrictions on future expansion and acknowledge the council's authority in disputed territories. Claire listened patiently, then shook her head. No. You reject our compromise? After everything that's happened? Your compromise still assumes you have authority over us. Claire explained. It assumes you have the right to set limits on where humanity can go. We don't accept that premise. Then what do you want? Kex asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Claire leaned forward. Complete recognition of human sovereignty, unrestricted expansion rights in unclaimed space, and a formal apology from the Council for initiating hostilities against a peaceful species. Kex raised a clawed hand for silence. You want us to apologize? You want us to simply accept your presence without any conditions? Yes, Claire said simply. That's what we wanted from the beginning. We never asked for your permission to exist among the stars. We never threatened you. You attacked us because you were used to yonder species obeying you without question. That's not our fault. This is unprecedented, Quack protested. Then it's time for a new precedent, Claire replied, echoing the words she'd used weeks ago. You have two choices. Accept our terms and leave us alone, or continue fighting a war that's costing you more than you ever imagined. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to back down. You can kill us, but you can't make us obey. Quex stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the other council representatives. The Valorian delegate, whose people had lost the most ships, spoke quietly. Perhaps the human is right. Perhaps it is time we remembered that authority must be earned, not demanded. The negotiations continued for 2 more days. In the end, the council agreed to humanity's terms. They would recognize human sovereignty, allow unrestricted expansion in unclaimed space, and issue a formal statement acknowledging that their ultimatum had been an overreach. It wasn't called an apology in the official documents, but everyone understood what it meant. News of the agreement spread across the galaxy. Younger species watched in amazement. The mighty Galaxy Council had backed down. An empire of ancient civilizations had been forced to negotiate as equals with humans who'd barely left their own solar system. On the Vigilant, Captain Nicole Davis received the ceasefire order while her crew was repairing battle damage. She read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "We won?" Lieutenant Paul Sherman asked in disbelief. "We didn't lose," Nicole corrected. "That's not the same thing as winning, but it's enough." On Mars Colony, Peter Grant watched the news broadcast with his daughter sitting on his lap. The 6-year-old girl didn't fully understand what had happened, but she knew the fighting was over. "Daddy, were you scared?" she asked. Peter thought about the reinforced shelters, the emergency drills, the nights spent wondering if Council ships would appear in orbit. "Yes, sweetheart, I was scared. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you're afraid." On Earth, Director Kevin Harper stood in front of cameras broadcasting to every human colony. He looked older than he had 6 weeks ago, aged by the weight of decisions that had cost thousands of lives. "The Galaxy Council has agreed to recognize humanity's right to exist freely among the stars. We paid a terrible price for this recognition. We lost good people, brave people, people who believed that freedom was worth fighting for. Some will say we were reckless to defy such powerful enemies. Maybe they're right. But I believe we taught the galaxy an important lesson today. We taught them that peace built on fear is fragile. We taught them that underestimating determination is the gravest mistake an empire can make. To every species watching this broadcast, know this: humanity doesn't seek conflict. We don't want to dominate others. We simply want to live our lives in peace. But if anyone tries to take that freedom from us again, they'll find the same answer waiting. We choose peace, but we prepare for war. That's the human way." 3 months later, Claire Morrison walked through New Geneva Station. Children played in the garden sections while their parents worked. Engineers repaired the damage from a brief skirmish that had occurred during the war. Life continued, as it always did. She passed a memorial wall where names were engraved. Captains, crew members, colonists who'd died defending humanity's freedom. She stopped to read a few names, people she'd never met but whose sacrifice had made her diplomatic success possible. Danny Foster found her there. You okay, Ambassador?" "Just remembering the cost. We got what we wanted, but it wasn't free." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Danny replied. They walked together toward the docking bay. Somewhere in the distance, human survey ships were already heading toward new star systems, exploring territories that were now undeniably theirs by right rather than permission. The galaxy had learned. The Council had learned. And humanity had proven something fundamental about themselves. They were a species that would rather fight for their principles than live comfortably on their knees. The ice in humanity's reply to the Council's warning had never melted. It had simply forced everyone else to adjust to its temperature.